Alright, AP Psychology students, welcome back to Liam's AP Psychology course. My name is Liam Kim, a rising junior in Korea International School Jeju, and I'm here to support you on your journey to get a 5 on the AP Psychology exam that you're all going to take in May. Now, in Unit 1, we talked about some people's names and some statistics, which I'm sure you already heard about in history classes and in science and math classes, so I bet that Unit 1 was pretty easy for you. It was kind of a recap. Frankly speaking, for all of you. However, in Unit 2, we're going to talk about neuroscience. That means some kind of scientific functions of the brain. What happens in the brain when the neurotransmitters are going to impact your axons, your terminals, and your neurons. You may not know what axons and terminals and neurons mean at this point, but you are going to know what are all of them when you finish watching this video. So pay attention, everyone, because this is going to be really hard, and the MCQ and the FRQ sections are going to ask you a lot from this unit. And if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. So Unit 2 is going to start with Module 9. Module 9 starts with biological psychology. A biological psychology is a scientific study that links biological, which includes genetic, neural, hormonal studies, and psychological processes. A neural communication is when neurons, which are the nerve cells, which are the building blocks of neural information system, are included within the communication block. And the parts of a neuron include dendrites, which are the branching fibers around the cell body. They receive information. Axon fibers are the long branches that send signals to the other end of the neuron and to other neurons. And myelin sheaths are fatty tissues that insulate some axons and improves speed of signal transfer. Now, the deterioration of these can lead to slow muscle signals, eventually to loss of muscle control, which can lead to a disease called multiple sclerosis, which is a disease that you don't want to encounter if you want to live a long and peaceful and beautiful life. Now, how neural impulses are generated. Chemical signals, or signals from our senses, they trigger neurons, which then produce an impulse called an electrical charge called the action potential that travels down the axon. For signals to trigger the impulse, it must be above a threshold, which is the level of stimulation required for a neural impulse. If it's not above the threshold, then there is no impulse. Therefore, it is an all or nothing response. The increasing level of stimulation above the threshold does not increase the impulse's intensity. It's an all or nothing response, so the signal is there or isn't there. Is no degree or magnitude. Instead, if there's a greater stimulus, there will simply be more impulses, right? So, on the other hand, it is not a stronger impulse in this situation. After a neuron has fired an impulse, it has a resting pause called the refractory period. So commonly, this type of function is compared to when you flush a toilet, right? So when you flush a toilet once, you cannot flush it right away, right? So you need to wait until the water is filled again within the toilet. It's the same as this thing, right? When the neuron has fired once, then you need to wait until it kind of recharges the energy, which is the action potential, in order to go into another stage, another phase of all this neural activity, right? So it's same to the toilet situation. You need to wait during the refractory period until the action potential can be charged again. Now, this is the cell structure of the motor neuron. As you can see, the cell body is the huge block that you can see on the top left, and it's the cell's life support center. And those kind of tentacle-looking tree branches that you see, they are called the dendrites. And they receive messages from other cells. And the long stick related to the cell body is called the axon. It passes messages away from the cell body to other neurons, muscles, or glands. And the thick white kind of wrapper that is wrapping around the axon is called the myelin sheaths, and they cover the axon of some neurons and helps speed neural impulses. And the neural impulse, called the action potential, are electrical signals traveling down the axon. And the other type of tree branches that you can see at the top right of the image are called the terminal branches of axon. And they form junctions with other cells. And they kind of pass on the neural impulse or the neurotransmitters that has traveled down the myelin sheaths through the axon onto the other cells. So this is where they receive the neurotransmitters from the cell body, and then they also send those neural impulses and the neurotransmitters onto the next axon or the cell body. Now, how neurons communicate and influence us. Synapses are the meeting points between neurons. It's where signals are transferred from one neuron to the other. It is the junction or the meeting point between the axon tip of the sending neuron and the dendrite, called the cell body of the receiving neuron. There is a gap at this junction called the synaptic gap. Signals are transferred through neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers. Neurotransmitters are released at the axon by the sending neuron and binds to the receptors on the receiving neuron, also called the postsynaptic neuron. And different neurotransmitters bind with different receptors, resulting in different effects. For example, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine plays a role in learning and memory. So after the neurotransmitters are released from the receptors, they are collected by the axon again, and this process is called reuptake. And preventing the reuptake of certain neurotransmitters can result in repeated firing or sending of signals to neurons. Sometimes this is done with drugs to treat diseases like depression, which is caused by a lack of a neurotransmitter called serotonin. Therefore, by inhibiting the reuptake of serotonin, the signals can keep on being sent, right? And these drugs are called SSRIs. And this is a really important concept and a really important term that you want to remember, because on the FAQ section, they always, every year, ask you about SSRIs. So you need to be able to explain exactly what SSRIs are and what they do and what kind of function they have and how are they formed. So you better put this on your notes, and yeah, always looking at my video and also other videos and some textbooks that you may have received from school, or even the Barron AP review book will help you a lot. So please, please, please look over this section, the SSRI section, in order to succeed on your FAQ portion that you're gonna take after watching this video. Alright, moving on. So this is an image that you might want to check out. So if you see at the bottom image right here, the sending neuron sends the action potential towards the axon terminal that we looked at the previous image, right? So the axon terminal is the top right here. They're also called the terminal branches of axon. They form junctions with other cells, right? So when the sending neuron sends the action potential towards the axon terminal, the axon terminal is connected to something called the synaptic gap, where they kind of receive the neurotransmitters. And there is something called the receptor sites on the receiving neurons. So when the neurotransmitter is passed on to the axon terminal then passes on the neurotransmitter towards the receptor sites on the receiving neuron. So this is where the next neuron related to this sending neuron will receive their neurotransmitters. However, as you can see, there are these kind of paved sections, right? So when these neurotransmitter balls are passed on to these gaps, they fill in the gaps one by one, and in one gap, only one ball can go in. So if there are 5 gaps, and if there are 10 balls, then 5 balls, they have nowhere to go, right? So these are called excess neurotransmitters, and these excess neurotransmitters, they are going to be reuptaked again and be sent to the axon terminal again, right? Now, this will cause some kind of diseases such as depression. And to stop these diseases, you need something called SSRIs, which is the serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which means that the reuptake of neurotransmitters such as serotonin will be inhibited by this drug. So by making the excess neurotransmitters to remain at these receptor sites and at the synaptic gaps, when the amount of serotonin increases at the synaptic gap, then the level of depression is going to decrease scientifically. So this will cause depression to kind of lessen, right? And this will make a person's life more happier and step out of the way from depression. So yeah, that's how SSRIs work. And you better really be able to explain this really in a professional way on your FAQ section.